So, right before making this video, as I sat down to watch The Wire, which I've been starting to get into lately a little bit, I heard some, shall we say, troubling news. I heard, or rather read on social media, that the Trump administration, namely Donald Trump himself, obviously, had pardoned a convicted crypto criminal named ChangPeng Zhao. I'm probably butchering that. I think technically in Chinese you say the last name first, so it's more like Zhao Changpeng, but people normally call him CZ on social media, and that's a whole lot easier, so I'm going to do that. CZ was convicted of violating the Bank Secrecy Act, and his company, Binance, one of the largest crypto exchanges in the world, was not only given a criminal fine of 1.8 billion, but also subjected to a 2.5 billion dollar order of forfeiture to settle three of their own criminal charges. These were guilty pleas, by the way, so when I heard that the administration had decided to pardon this particular crypto criminal, my eyebrows immediately began rising. Just to be absolutely sure, because you never really can tell when it comes to social media engagement farmers these days, I checked the official list of presidential clemency grants, and sure enough, there he is. As of October 21st, 2025, CZ has now been pardoned. But for today's video, I want to draw a sort of narrative picture for everyone and round out the context on who this is, what his organization did, and how the conflicts of interest are now so egregious and so obvious, it's difficult for me to look at the United States as anything other than a corrupt quid pro quo pay to play racket, where the more money you have, as long as you enrich the sitting president, the more you're allowed to get away with. Let me start by going over what they actually did, Binance and CZ, that is, as in what they admitted to and what they were convicted of, because I don't think most people understand the severity of what we're talking about right now. The words Bank Secrecy Act are sort of nebulous at best, and they don't really adequately describe the charges. So let me just quickly summarize with a few quotes from the DOJ and a couple of case documents from their civil trials. From the Sizemore class action against CZ himself, among others, we can see on page 25, quote, internally, Binance officers, employees, and agents have acknowledged that the Binance platform has facilitated potentially illegal activities. For example, in February 2019, after receiving information regarding Hamas transactions on Binance, Lim explained to a colleague that terrorists usually send small sums, as large sums constitute money laundering. Lim's colleague replied, can barely buy an AK-47 with $600. And with regard to certain Binance customers, including customers from Russia, Lim acknowledged in a February 2020 chat, like, come on, they are here for crime. Binance's MLRO agreed that we see the bad, but we close two eyes, end quote. Keep in mind, this is from a civil case, not a criminal one, but I want to start slow and begin establishing that they knew what was happening and they did it anyways. Next up is the CFTC case, Commodity and Futures Trading Commission, against CZ and Binance, where we see on page 34, quote, Zhao agreed that Binance's PR messaging was critical, explaining in a meeting the next day that we need to finesse the messaging a little bit, and the message is never about Binance blocking US users because our public stance is we never had any US users. So we never targeted the US. We never had US users. But during the June 9th, 2019 meeting, Zhao himself stated that 20% to 30% of our traffic comes from the US. And Binance's July 2019 financial reporting package, which was emailed directly to Zhao, attributes approximately 22% of Binance's revenue for June 2019 to US customers, end quote. Boring, sure, I know, I get it, but the point is that these people knew what they were doing. They lied in order to keep doing it, and if you then switch over to the US Department of the Treasury, we get a scathing summary of their criminal charges. This part is long, I get that, but there's a lot of people out there who don't seem to understand that this isn't just a random pardon for someone who was unjustly targeted, okay? It's not that. Quote, Binance willfully failed to report well over 100,000 suspicious transactions that it processed as a result of its deficient controls, including transactions involving terrorist organizations, ransomware, child sexual exploitation material, frauds, and scams. 1. Terrorist financing. Binance failed to report the FinCEN transactions associated with terrorist groups including Al-Qaeda, the Islamic State of Iraq and Syria, ISIS, Hamas's Al-Qassam brigades, and the Palestinian Islamic Jihad, PIJ. 2. Ransomware. Despite being one of the largest receivers of ransomware proceeds and transacting in millions of dollars of ransomware proceeds from attacks involving at least 24 different strains of ransomware, Binance failed to report these transactions. 3. Child sexual abuse material, also known as CSAM. Binance never reported transactions with websites devoted to selling CSAM, including dark scandals. 4. Darknet markets, scams, and other illicit activity. Despite sending and receiving virtual asset proceeds from large-scale hacks, account takeovers, and darknet markets dealing in illegal narcotics, counterfeit and fraud related goods and services, as well as other illegal contraband, Binance never reported any such transactions. End quote. Okay, we got through the long quotes, but please do keep in mind they pled guilty to all of these charges, okay? Leading to the largest Treasury and FinCEN penalty in American history. And even with the severity on full display here, CZ, the CEO and co founder of Binance as a platform, only got 4 months in prison despite a 36-month recommendation. By the way, he finished serving that sentence in late 2024. I'll come back to that part. So, what's next? Well, next we need to introduce a new company called World Liberty Financial, which was founded by sitting President Donald Trump and all of his male children. As a family, they own and control about 60% of the business. Important thing to be aware of, World Liberty Financial, WLF, is a crypto company which also has its own stablecoin called USD1. Now, a lot of people may not care about this, but what if I said that Binance actually helped create USD1? And what if I then clarified that Binance almost single-handedly helped legitimize the stablecoin by funding a $2 billion investment deal with it, while at the very same time, as in within days of that deal, CZ admits publicly that he applied for a presidential pardon? Are we starting to see the conflict here? Also, it's a little bit complicated to explain, but USD1 is backed by US Treasuries, which means that as long as Binance doesn't redeem those 2 billion tokens, the Trump family is making something like $60 to $80 million per year as a result of the deal. There is a tangible financial benefit from the relationship for them, which begins to explain why the president's net worth has massively increased more than ever before while he's in office. Hint, it's because he's corrupt and he's using the country to enrich himself. I'm not even close to finishing yet, by the way. How many people know that Binance in late 2024 heavily invested in another blockchain company called Hemi? By itself, no big deal. But about 1 year later, October of 2025, as in very close proximity to the pardon itself, which occurred on October 21st, October of 2025, Hemi partners up with a company called Dominari Securities, which is a subsidiary of Dominari Holdings. And if you look at the board of advisors for Dominari Holdings, you see Eric and Donald Trump Jr. What's more, if you check the SEC filings for Dominari Holdings, you can see that the address of principal executive offices is located at 725 Fifth Avenue, second floor, New York, New York. That's Trump Tower. Not even a couple of weeks before the president pardons a convicted financial criminal, his two sons commingle investments with that criminal's business. Not to mention the $2 billion deal already facilitated by the very same business in partnership with World Liberty Financial, which nets the family tens of millions of dollars per year. The conflict of interest right now is undeniable. Still, I kept puzzling over something because CZ already served his sentence and he paid the fine. There's no material gain for him as a result of this pardon, so it would seem, other than reputation perhaps. So why did he apply for it? Honestly, I couldn't even remotely figure it out until I went back and read the plea agreement. In a Twitter statement, he stepped down as CEO following the plea, but the way that he framed the resignation was that he was doing the right thing. If you only read the statement itself and took his word as fact, you'd think that he chose this. But it just so happens that part of the guilty plea explicitly forced him to step down as CEO of Binance. Quote, defendant Binance has accepted the resignation of Zhao, its CEO, and prohibited him from any present or future involvement in operating or managing defendant's business. This prohibition begins as of plea acceptance and ends 3 years from the date a monitor is appointed. End quote. There it is. CZ getting a pardon effectively wipes out the guardrails that were put down previously, where the only material benefit to him is resuming some kind of control or authority at Binance. And all of this happens after not just one, but multiple high-profile business deals, directly and indirectly, with the president and his family. It gets even better, or worse, I guess. Remember when the crypto market crashed recently because of Donald Trump's tariff announcement directly? The same one that he rolled back on within like 2 days? Yep, sure thing. A huge amount of the reason why that crash was so intense for everyone was because Binance had issues. And at the very same time, a specific crypto whale account deposited $80 million and then shorted the market perfectly within seconds of Donald Trump's social media post, netting almost $200 million in profit. Get this, the same crypto whale who pulled off pinpoint accurate trading to the very second of the president's behavior also appears to be linked to a Polymarket account, which has only made one series of trades betting that yes, Donald Trump will pardon CZ, which he has. The trade is obviously massively in the green, although far less than the 200 million that he earned previously, igniting speculation that this trader has intimate insider knowledge of White House decision making. I've seen arguments circulating that this couldn't possibly be the same person because they only made $56,000 from the trade, but something to consider is the fact that prediction market betting pools aren't actually all that big, so you can only really make as much money as other people are throwing down on the opposite side. On top of this, the volume on display for this one particular candidate, CZ, in a very long list of other potential betting options, is like 10 to 20 times higher than any of the others, which makes me think that yes, someone knew, just like someone very obviously knew about Trump's little tariff stunt to crash the market and made almost $200 million from it. Coincidentally, his youngest son is now worth $150 million at age 19 because of crypto. What we are witnessing is the total degradation of ethical integrity in this country, and if you had any doubt about that, which some people still will, here's just one final tidbit, okay? Back when the Binance deal with World Liberty Financial initially happened, a series of letters were sent. A lot of people looked at it with skepticism. One letter to the Deputy Attorney General, one to Binance, and one to Zach Witkoff, co-founder of World Liberty. These letters requested more information, and one of them received a reply. That reply came from Baker Hostetler on behalf of World Liberty Financial, but more specifically, Teresa Goody Guillen, who represents World Liberty. Here's the problem. Teresa Goody Guillen, at the very same time that she represents the company, which is owned, founded, and controlled by the president and his family, at the very same fucking time, according to registered disclosures, she is lobbying on behalf of Binance, but not only that, she was also directly helping spearhead the pardon for CZ. Honestly, I don't even know what else there is to say at this point. I am ashamed of this country. I do not, for the life of me, understand how so many people are incapable of seeing the corruption on display, and I genuinely pray that we can excise this cancer before it metastasizes. But there's also not much else I can personally do other than make videos like this. I hope that some people found it to be valuable. That's it. If you want to support the channel, check out the links down below, specifically Locals and Patreon, channel memberships, and a special VPN discount. That's good. Everybody grab that if you want. Also, the Upper Echelon website for written summaries of the videos, but I'll cut it there and stop rambling. As always, thank you all for watching, question everything, and have a nice night.